Welcome into a very special edition of the CBB Central podcast. We're some college basketball guys, but we love the NBA draft as much as anyone. So we're going to try our hand at a big mock draft, all 60 picks, going through it pick by pick, alternating person by person. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to pick based on what we think the team should do more than necessarily what we expect to happen, just because there's so much misinformation out there. It's kind of hard to do the other way. So we'll kind of go the way we see teams should draft. I'll toss it over to Brad here to introduce our special guest for the show. And but Brad, how you doing, man? It's been a little bit. I'm looking forward to the draft. I've been sitting around all day reading mock drafts and big boards. I saw something about Jaren Jackson's shin angle making him the most elite prospect in this draft. So I realized I was too far in the hole then and took a couple minutes break, but I've just pretty much been reading draft stuff all day. It's been a pretty fun one. How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Definitely starved for draft news. Cannot wait until Thursday. Yeah, I mean, there are millions of mock drafts now with contradictory inside info. I saw one that said, Jaren Jackson will definitely go number 3. And another one said the Hawks have officially ruled Jaren Jackson out and they won't be picking him. So there's just, so much crap being thrown up against the wall. But we have with us today, very special guest, the man who is subjected to texting with me every single day nonstop about college basketball, the NBA draft, and the NBA, and all of those things. My good friend Patrick Wong. Patrick, how are you?
I'm good, Brett. How are you?
Yeah, I mean, I can't even emphasize enough how much he has to put up with me in my constant texts and my constant need to talk basketball. So he's definitely credible. Yeah, he's been definitely vetted by me over these past few years.
I've been molded to listening to Brad every day since early high school?
Early high school, yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely excited to have Patrick on. And so the way we're going to do it is I'm going to start with pick 1 with Phoenix, and then Patrick got pick 2 with Sacramento, Brad pick 3, and we're just going to go down in that order through. So I'll have Memphis, Patrick will have Dallas, and we'll just go right on through all 60 picks. Any beginning thoughts before we get right into it, guys?
No, just want to emphasize that this is what we are going to do. And then we're going to go all 60 picks because go big or go home. And when we thought about this idea, we thought it was pretty original, but I've seen at least 10 podcasts do this over the last 2 days. So hopefully we are the best alternative there, because we actually have seen most of these college guys play multiple times throughout the years. So it's not like random NBA guys going off of the 3-minute highlight videos.
Yeah, I think we do provide a bit of a different touch to the mock draft season. So looking forward to providing that. And so I don't want to get started with Phoenix. I'm going to go with a not necessarily surprising pick. I'm going to go with DeAndre Ayton at number 1. I'm kind of torn between him and Luka Doncic. I'm super high on him. But I just think, I think we pretty much all understand that this is where Phoenix is going with pick number 1, and the fact that, DeAndre Ayton's 7 feet tall and carved out of stone. He kind of has that DeMarcus Cousins game offensively, is kind of the comp you see a lot in terms of his ceiling. I believe he'll shoot the ball in the NBA eventually. I don't think the defense is as bad as people think. I listened to a super deep dive from Sam Vecini about the defense from DeAndre Ayton. But in short, he's my number 1 overall pick to get us started here.
With 2, I'm going to go with Luka Doncic. Obviously one of the best and most touted young Europeans in quite some time. I mean, what I like about him is that he has 6'8", but can also has that really high basketball IQ. Going with mismatches, and also his passing ability. When he has those crazy hook passes to the weak side shooter, or just those hooks to the roll man. I think also with Sacramento, he's one of those guys where he has always been like a secondary ball handler, which is kind of where I see him in this role, with De'Aaron Fox helping out. And then he also has some, I guess some people call him some defensive shortcomings. I think he's not the most athletic guy, but I think playing behind Willie Cauley-Stein, he could help with that. And then just also Willie as a nice role man too.
Okay, so moving on to pick number 3. I'm going to go with the guy that I have highest on my board right now. I think he has the highest upside. That's Jaren Jackson. Obviously, kind of played out of position at Michigan State. You know, he played the 4 next to Nick Ward, but I mean he's going to be a true center at the NBA level. He's like 6'11". He can shoot threes. He can put the ball on the floor. He's not really anywhere close to a finished product at this point, but you know, Atlanta's timeline, they can afford to take more of a long-term play as they kind of rebuild this roster after the Al Horford and Paul Millsap era. So he's definitely a risky pick. I don't know about if he can necessarily play full-time with John Collins long-term, but they can definitely play together for stretches, and I think you don't want to let John Collins kind of decide, you know, if or when you're going to take a franchise player. He's not like the level of player that would dissuade you from taking a talent like Jaren Jackson.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's been some talk of Jaren Jackson being a guy that you or John Collins being this like foundational piece with the Hawks that you would not draft a 4 or a big man because you have John Collins. To me, I disagree, especially in a draft that is as talented as this one. Moving on to number 4 at Memphis, I think this kind of falls perfectly for Marvin Bagley here. That's where I'll go. Memphis is in a position where they might trade this pick because they want to contend right away. But you're not going to find a more, I think, pro-ready player in this draft than Marvin Bagley. Some people have questioned maybe the ceiling, but at this point, I think he's going to come into the NBA and right away be a super productive player, bring energy on both ends. I know the defense has been questioned by a lot of people. I'm not as down on it as a lot of people, but he works hard on the glass. He's got a diverse offensive game, and I think he's only going to get better on that end of the floor. So I think solid pick here for Memphis at 4 would be Marvin Bagley. And then moving on to number 5 in Dallas with Patrick.
Number 5, I'm going to go kind of safe with this one. Although Dallas does have the market, has the cap room for like Boogie Cousins or DeAndre Jordan, I'm going to go with Mo Bamba at 5. Just the physical tools themselves. 7 feet tall with absurd 7'9" wingspan. At his floor, he can at least be like a really good rim runner, like a vertical spacer that can alter so many shots. Also, his rebounds pretty hard. I think the biggest issue with him is like his motor. He's very on and off, and I think he's kind of shies away from contact, but he's been working with Drew Hanlon, trying to tweak his shooting mechanics. So that's where I'm going with for Dallas.
Okay, number 6 for Orlando. I think the Magic kind of need to take a risk here. They've been, kind of treading water in that kind of mid to late lottery for like the past like 7 or 8 years, and they've let talented players like Victor Oladipo and Tobias Harris and Mo Harkless be let go for almost nothing, for pennies on the dollar, and then they also they also have missed on numerous picks like with Mario Hezonja, even though Hezonja started to play a little better this year. But I think that they have to go with Trae Young here. It's certainly a risk that Young's game won't totally translate, or that he's going to get picked on too much on switches in the modern NBA by bigger and more physical guards and wings. But I think the offensive package and the skill set is just too much for Orlando, because they need a point guard so much, and they need this franchise cornerstone that I don't think that the Magic can pass up on Young here.
Moving on, I have number 7th pick in Chicago. Things get interesting again. I think there's a lot of ways that they could go here. I'm going to go with Michael Porter Jr. I think this is probably the most likely outcome if he's on the board at 7 that the Chicago Bulls do take him. I just think his physical tools at 6'10", his ability to shoot the ball. Obviously, the health concerns are very present and very real. With a guy of his size, to have back trouble is something that you definitely worry about. But for me, a guy like Porter, the Bulls need star power right now. And Porter is the clearest path to a star, I think, on the board remaining. I know there's been talk about Wendell Carter at this spot, maybe talk of a point guard. That's kind of buzzed in and out, whether they'd go point at number 7. But to me, a guy with Michael Porter's tools, a guy with Michael Porter's upside is not something that Chicago can pass on. There's been a lot of discussion between that camp and Michael Porter. I know they've been running all his medicals. It's been the Chicago medical team. I feel like there's kind of been a buzz that Michael Porter wants to go to Chicago. That's kind of been like unsaid, but that's just the feel I get, from what I read and what I see around the league, is that Michael Porter wants to be in Chicago. I think Chicago wants to have Michael Porter. And so for that reason, I'm going to pick him at 7 as the Chicago Bulls general manager.
With 8 with Cleveland, I think Cleveland's kind of in a weird spot where you don't know if LeBron's coming back or if he's leaving. Just kind of if LeBron's going to leave, I think they go with the best player available. So that's Wendell Carter. Wendell Carter, 6'10", can play 4/5. Also gives Cleveland a lot of offensive versatility. They like to have a lot of spot-up shooters, so Wendell Carter can shoot, and then he can also pass pretty well. I think obviously his biggest concern is defensively, and I think that him and Kevin Love would make not the best defensive tandem that we've seen.
Yeah. Cleveland is in a really weird spot where they have so much money tied up in Tristan Thompson too, and they have Larry Nance. But I think Carter was the best player on the board there by a pretty wide margin. I think that top 8 that we just saw in those first 8 picks is clearly the 8 best prospects in a tier or a 2 of its own right there. With the Knicks at number 9, I think I'm gonna go. It's a tough one. On one hand, I could go Colin Sexton with the fit with Frank Ntilikina. That's a pretty good defensive potential backcourt, but there's just so many concerns with Sexton and like his style of play and his shoot first attitude and kind of the inefficiencies in his game. So I think I'll go with the safe pick here and go with Mikal Bridges, the wing from Villanova. The Knicks really need a wing. Bridges might not have the highest upside due to his age, but he's a very good shooter. He's a very good and long defender. The one kind of concern with Bridges is he doesn't really have the length or the size to play the 4. He certainly has the length, but he's more of a defender 1 through 3. But the Knicks have a star in Kristaps Porzingis, and they have a few other solid players, and like a Tim Hardaway or a Frank Ntilikina. And I don't think that there's a necessarily lottery ticket that's worth taking, like in terms of a potential star. I think that this safe and definitely productive Mikal Bridges is the pick.
I'm really annoyed that you picked Mikal Bridges there, Brad, because I was praying he fell to Philly at 10, not only because I love the fit, but because I think it's like the clearest pick. Beyond Mikal Bridges, I think there's a lot of different ways that Philly could go. If I were them, this is super tough. I think I'd just draft Miles Bridges like I really don't know. Like there hasn't been a ton of buzz about Miles Bridges to Philly. But if I were the Sixers, I think I would just draft Miles Bridges. He's athletic. He shoots the ball. They definitely need another floor spacer. If nothing else, he does that. He's excellent shooting the ball on the move and off pin down screens, things of that nature, which will be super valuable in that offense. I was thinking maybe they'd go Lonnie Walker, but I'm personally just not that high on Lonnie Walker, which is why I passed on him personally. Thought about Shea Gilgeous-Alexander because I'm intrigued by a pairing defensively with him and Ben Simmons, but I'm also not intrigued with the offensive pairing of two guys who you're questioning how they'll shoot the ball. I think here I would go with Miles Bridges if I had nothing else to do. I thought about maybe reaching for Zaire Smith, but I think I'll go with Miles Bridges, who I think probably be my best player on the board at this point in the draft.
I know with Charlotte, I was actually gonna pick Miles Bridges for mine too, but I mean, now I'm kind of in a tough spot. I think I just might go with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Obviously, Charlotte needs a lot of forwards, but I feel like a lot of the better forwards are kind of taken at this point. I think with Charlotte, they don't really know what's going on with Kemba, if they want to move him or if he wants to leave in free agency. So Shea would be able to soften the blow there. I mean, if he does come back, then Shea could also play with Kemba because he's like a 6'6" combo point guard who we're not really sure about the shooting. I mean, he shot like 40% from college three, but also a small sample. But Shea Gilgeous' defensive upside and just his ability to be a secondary ball handler was pretty good for this.
Okay, so number 12 with the Clippers. So Kevin at number 13 is gonna have to adjust to what I do here. I think I'll go with Robert Williams. He's great physical tools at the center position. Another guy who played out of position in college. He played up at the 4 next to Tyler Davis instead of his more natural 5. But he's just a really great fit in the modern NBA as a lob target with his humongous wingspan. I think it's close to 7'5", and I think he's like 6'10". But he's a powerful player. He's a powerful rebounder and finisher. Just a physical specimen who I think even if they bring back DeAndre Jordan, he can kind of be eased in as the center of the future. And if Jordan leaves, I think he could potentially make an impact right away in that kind of Clint Capella mold. Williams is a better offensive player than Clint Capella was, especially coming into the draft. But I mean, you're not going to run plays for Robert Williams, so it's not really going to matter too much. Kind of what we talked about, Kevin, on the last podcast between like Jared Vanderbilt and Kayvon Looney, where like Looney's a better offensive player, but they're both going to play the same role in the NBA, so it doesn't matter. So I'm going to lock in Robert Williams here at number 12.
I really like that pick. It's who I was going to take if you went point guard, which is kind of where I thought you'd go. So I'll go point guard instead. I'll go Colin Sexton. We've discussed our concerns with Sexton on the podcast a little bit. Just he's a little ball dominant. The shooting's a bit of a concern, but for me, the competitiveness is something I think Doc Rivers will really love. And he's something I love. You really feed off his energy on the floor. He still has a lot of upside. He's a guy who's still learning the point guard position. He played a lot of 2 guard in high school. The upside for me is there with Colin Sexton. And when you're the Clippers drafting in the late lottery, a team that desperately needs upside, I think Colin Sexton is the pick here for the Clippers. I'll pass it on over to Patrick in Denver for the final pick of the lottery.
The last pick in the lottery, I'm going to go with Kevin Knox. Denver kind of needs a long-term option at this forward position with Wilson Chandler expiring and Will Barton as a free agent this year. I think Kevin Knox is can play in Kentucky, kind of played a little bit out of position. I think he's going to be more of a combo forward, but more emphasis on the 4. Just like a stretch 4, kind of a versatile on offense, can come off pin downs, has a nice touch. But it's kind of pretty loose handling the ball. So I think he can play off Jokic a little bit. Also on defensively, he's kind of a hit or miss. He has like the tools to be a good defender, but I think just youth and inexperience is kind of his calling card on that one.
Yeah, I agree completely on Kevin Knox. I think he's definitely a 4, but he is a very good fit next to Jokic, especially because he's such a good shooter and Jokic is such a good passer. He was someone that I was looking to pick for Washington here at number 15. Now that he's off the board, this is kind of where the draft falls off for me. My next 2 prospects on the board is probably who I'm going to decide between for this pick, and that's Lonnie Walker and Zaire Smith. So the Wizards have obviously John Wall and Bradley Beal at the 1 and the 2, and Otto Porter at the 3. But in terms of depth and like coming off the bench, they could use like a stretch 4, but with Knox off the board, that's really not available right now. The next best power forward, that would be such a reach to take a Keita Bates-Diop or a Jared Vanderbilt or like a Kevin Hervey. So that's just way too much of a reach. They have Kelly Oubre on the wing as kind of a reserve who like you can play in a small ball lineup with him and Porter being the forwards. But I think that you could throw in another one of these smaller wings in there, who could potentially play with Wall and Beal, and could come off the bench. I'll go with Lonnie Walker. He's the higher upside pick. Again, kind of like Colin Sexton, there are questions with his decision making, but he's a very good athlete. He has a very promising jump shot come along, and I think he's 6'4" with a 6'10" wingspan, so he does have the length to guard threes, even though he's more of a guy who should be guarding 1s and 2s. But I'll lock in Lonnie Walker here.
All right, I think it's on to me for Phoenix at number 16. This is a pick that I think a lot of people have speculated that Phoenix could try to package with their second rounder to move up into the late lottery to grab a prospect that they're a little more high on, I think, namely a point guard. Because at 16, the point guard options, I think we all expect Trey, Shea, Gilgeous-Alexander, and Colin Sexton all to be off the board, which leaves, to me, the best point guard on the board, Aaron Holiday. To me, that'd be a big reach at number 16. So I'll just go with a high upside type of player, and that guy for me will be Zaire Smith. I think Phoenix is a team where you start to really like the defensive upside, but if you have Zaire Smith and Josh Jackson in your playing rotation, 2 really long, super bouncy athletes, which is especially important given the questions we have about DeAndre Ayton as a defender long term. If you have 2 guys who are elite at keeping their man in front, that's super beneficial, especially given the fact that Devin Booker plays about as much defense as a traffic cone. I think Zaire Smith is probably the right pick here for Phoenix if they can't move up and get a point guard, just to get that high upside piece for the future.
I think with my pick at 17, I think Milwaukee. Let's see. I mean, right now it's kind of like an odd spot in the draft. I think this might be a little bit of a reach, but I might go with Aaron Holiday. He's a combo guard who's pretty comfortable on and off ball, especially off ball. He shot like almost 43% from 3. Pretty good as like catch and shoot guy. And also his defense, he's a very pitbull defender. Despite being like 6'1", he has excellent length at 6'7.5". So I think he'd be able to play coming off the bench with a lot of what they have.
Yeah, I think that was the spot in the draft where it really falls off, and it can go in so many different ways. 18 San Antonio. I'm gonna go with Kyrie Thomas. He's an elite defensive guard. He's about 6'3" with a 6'10" wingspan. Primarily a 2 guard, but playing with DeJounte Murray in the backcourt, that's going to create such a potent defensive backcourt. Thomas is also a very good 3-point shooter and improved his creation ability this past season at Creighton. So that's a really promising backcourt. I don't know if there's enough firepower for like long-term success there for San Antonio. I know that DeJounte Murray has his offensive question marks, and many people see Thomas, kind of as like a more limited role player, but defensively, I mean, that's such a tantalizing combo there.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting defensive backcourt, to say the least, because I really like Murray as a defender. We've discussed a ton about Kyrie Thomas as a defender. At 19 to Atlanta, this is a tougher pick just because I think Atlanta needs upside, and so I'll go with Dante DiVincenzo. I like Kevin Huerter as a prospect more in that kind of combo guard, play the 1-2, maybe even a little bit of 3 and a 3-guard backcourt, good size shooters. But I think I'll draft DiVincenzo. He's a superior athlete. I think he's a little bit superior creating off the bounce. For a team like Atlanta that is so much kind of in flux, given their point guard situation with Dennis Schroeder potentially on the trading block and a lack of just overall talent in the backcourt, I'll go with the high risk, high reward prospect in DiVincenzo here at 19.
At 20, with Minnesota, I'm going to go with Kitabeats Diop. Minnesota desperately needs a backup 3 because they're playing Banalitza at the 3 for most of the end of the season last year. Beta Diop's is kind of like a long-armed combo 3-4. Pretty good defensive versatility. Is also pretty good with just catch and shoot jumpers. So I think that's a lot of role player potential right there for Minnesota.
Okay, Utah, number 21. This is a pretty tough pick as well. So they have Rubio and Donovan Mitchell in the backcourt. Again, this is a team that could use a 4 or 5, a backup 4-man, but it's kind of limited options. I think Jared Vanderbilt or Kevin Hervey, like I mentioned before, I think it's still a reach if you were to pick either one of them. So I think I'm going to go with a wing, even though they have a lot of wings already. But I think I'm going to go with Kevin Huerter from Maryland. He's 6'7", high IQ player, excellent shooter. Can make great decisions on the move. He's just a player that was consistently underrated because he just does everything right. And he's not a very flashy prospect, but I think he could potentially play the 2 and the 3 and provide some shooting and some spacing. I know that maybe Utah could use more of like a scoring type guard, but for a rookie in the 20s, that's going to be hard to come by and rely on, even as like a leading scorer on a bench unit. That is some high bust potential, especially in year one. Look at what happened with Malik Monk with Charlotte, who presumably was supposed to fill that kind of bench spark plug role, and it took him half or even 3/4 of the season before he really found his stride. So I'm going to go with a more safe but definitely effective pick here with Kevin Huerter.
22, the Chicago Bulls. I'm making both Chicago Bulls picks. There's been kind of a consensus around the league that they've promised Chandler Hutchison here at number 22. They don't necessarily need a wing after drafting Michael Porter. They could use a big though, and so for a team that's in a rebuild, has a chance to develop a guy, I'm going to reach here and go with Mitchell Robinson. I just think the physical tools are elite, super athletic, has high rim protecting potential, and the Bulls aren't on a timeline of this year we need to contend. So unlike a lot of the teams in the back half of the first round. So I think Robinson is a good fit here where he can maybe spend some time in the G League, spend some time learning from some veterans like a like a Robin Lopez, who's a very good defensive big guy, and develop his skills over the next year or two before making a bigger impact year 3?
At 23 of Indiana, Indiana hasn't really had a lot of success with a lot of international guys in the draft. They kind of shy away from that, but I think with them, I'm going to pick Eli Okobo out of France. Darren Collison's 30 years old and is in the last year of his contract, and I think that point guard could be a need in the future. Eli Okobo, if for people who aren't really familiar with him, in my mind, he's a more wild version of Jalen Brunson. Both score first, 6'2" point guards, both lefties. Ellie's a very, very good shooter. Kind of has a push shot, but he's a really good shooter. He's still learning how to play the point guard, but he's improved significantly in his pick and roll situations, especially in a league where it's a lot of pick and roll emphasis. He's defense. He's small, but he has a 6'8" length, and yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with.
All right, 24 in Portland. I think this would be a no-brainer selection if he's still on the board. I'm going with Jacob Evans from Cincinnati. Portland needs a guy to come off the bench and be able to defend and hit threes. Evans can play both the 2 and the 3. He's another guy who's improved his creation ability significantly over this past college season. And I think he could, definitely play with Lillard and McCollum, or he could come off the bench. I know that Pat Connaughton and Shabazz Napier are both restricted free agents. I don't know if they're in the Blazers' future plans, but either way, I think Evans fits nicely with the pieces that they have, and I think that this would be an absolute no-brainer home run for Portland.
Yeah, I love that pick at Portland, Brad. I'm a big Jacob Evans guy in general. Leaves me in kind of an interesting spot with the Lakers. There's been 2 guys who've been rumored to maybe have been promised, Kevin Huerter and Mitchell Robinson. Both guys are off the board. I'm going back and forth here on how I want to go. I think there's a very valid reason to just go shooting here, especially given the potential that the Lakers are going to add some a high-profile piece or two this offseason, notably LeBron James. Obviously, you need shooting if you're going to have LeBron. But I'm just going to go in a different direction here. I'm going to go Chandler Hutchinson. I just think he's a very useful player. At this point in the draft, they drafted a guy in Josh Hart last year who was a college player, who was a 4-year college guy who people kind of knew what he was, but at the same time, what he was an NBA role player and a pretty good one at that. To me, Chandler Hutchinson's a pretty good NBA role player. Good size, well built already. Playing 4 years in college. Isn't an elite shooter, but the shot could develop a little better and become truly a highly valuable 3-and-D prospect. So that's where I'll go at number 25 to the Lakers.
26 of Philly. I'm going to go more shooting with them, and I'm going to pick Mo Wagner. Kind of a little bit of a reach too, but with Ersan Ilyasova going to be a free agent this year. Philly just needs a lot of shooting just to open up driving lanes for Ben Simmons, and I think he'd be he also Mo Wagner also provides a lot of energy, which is contagious.
Okay, number 27. I've not seen this guy linked to Boston, but he's certainly the guy that I would pick if I were the Celtics, and that's Javon Carter. I think he just he totally fits what the Celtics mentality of like defensive perimeter toughness. He is a pesky defender who will pressure the ball, and I think he's 6'2". He's a good 3-point shooter. There are questions about his ability to create offense for himself at the NBA level, but I think at the very worst, he's this great defensive point guard who can play with Rozier and Marcus Smart on that second unit. I think he could even play with Kyrie Irving in certain situations in the backcourt, and probably Shane Larkin's going to get more than the minimum, so the Celtics probably can't afford him. So that's just a good option to be that extra ball handler, another great perimeter defender, and add some much needed 3-point shooting to the Celtics bench.
Yeah, now I'm at Golden State. This is kind of a tough spot, just because they don't really know. Obviously, it's a team that doesn't have a ton of needs. They really could use wing depth is the biggest thing, and there's certainly thoughts that the Warriors will buy a pick in the early second round to further augment their draft haul this year. So they could be looking at 2 wings. Kyrie Thomas would have been the ideal pick. I don't know that he falls there. Since he doesn't, I'll pick Josh Okogie here. I think there was a lot of options. I considered Troy Brown, who's kind of had a bit of a larger fall. DeAnthony Melton was a guy, Jerome Robinson as well, and Grayson Allen. Those are kind of the 5 guys I was debating between. I'll just go with Okogie, 6'4", 7-foot wingspan. Was extremely productive at Georgia Tech, a bit wild at times on the floor. I think that's something that Steve Kerr and that Warriors player development staff can work on with him. And obviously he won't need to do too much, but as a bench guy who will be a versatile defender, as a bench guy who will shoot the ball pretty well and have some, attacking the rim versatility. To me, that's the pick for the Warriors at 28.
At 29, I think I'm just going to go with Grayson on this one, Grayson Allen. Kind of people already know what he kind of do. Spot up shooter, can handle the ball a little bit. Pretty good straight line driver. Also has a lot of energy, a lot of always plays really hard. And kind of fits like a nice backup too.
Okay, number 30 with Atlanta. So we already have them picking Dante DiVincenzo at that kind of combo guard off guard spot, and then Jaren Jackson as a center. So they could definitely use a backup point guard. I mean, they could use a starting point guard if and when Schroeder leaves, but they could also use a backup point guard. They could also just go for the best player available because they are in a deep rebuild. I think I'm leaning the latter. I think I'm leaning best player available. And on my board, that's Melvin Frazier from Tulane. He's very athletic. He can shoot. He has great 3-and-D potential. I think he would be another piece to add to that kind of wing core there with Dante DiVincenzo and Taurean Prince and maybe even DeAndre Bembry and who knows if Kent Bazemore is part of their long-term plans. But that's just another kind of a two-way guy, the way that the NBA is moving toward, and I've really liked what I've seen from Frazier.
So that wraps up the first round. We have 30 picks down, 30 to go. A couple of quick notes from what we've done so far. If you haven't been fully locked and loaded the entire time, DeAndre Ayton went number 1, Luka Doncic 2 to the Kings, Jaren Jackson at 3, Marvin Bagley 4, and Mo Bamba 5. Bulls get Michael Porter. The Knicks steal Mikal Bridges at 9. Clippers with their 2 first-rounders grab Robert Williams and Colin Sexton. Kevin Huerter to 21 to Utah. And Grayson Allen off the board at 29 to Brooklyn. A couple of the notable picks from us here. A couple guys still on the board. Jalen Brunson, Troy Brown, Jerome Robinson, DeAnthony Melton, Gary Trent, Landry Shamet, Anthony Simons, Jared Vanderbilt, Desnan Musa, the international prospect, as well as many others. So let's dive back into the draft here. With second round, pick 1, pick 31 overall, Phoenix. Once again, they might be packaging these picks. I picked with them first. I picked with them 16th. I pick again with them here at 31. I'm not going to let Jalen Brunson slide any further. The dude just flat out competes, shoots the ball extremely well, gets to the rim, crafty. To me, they have some point guard woes. Jalen Brunson could do an admirable job as a starter or a backup there. If nothing else, he's just a really good locker room guy on a young team. Seems odd to consider a rookie kind of a benefit to your locker room, but Jalen Brunson he's such a good leader. to me, he's the right fit, and we stop his small little slide down into the second round at 31.
At 32, I don't think there's any player more tailor fit to Memphis's grit and grind mentality than Javon Carter.
We already picked Carter.
You?
Yeah.
That's on me, Brad.
Uh-oh.
I gotta reevaluate this. Sheesh. Okay. I'm gonna go with Troy Brown then. The upside is there. He's kind of a versatile defender. Offensively, he's like a nice secondary ball handler. Athleticism is okay, but I think his biggest worry is shooting. Didn't really shoot it that well at Oregon, and I think at this point he's one of the best players available.
Okay, 33 to Dallas. Mo Bamba was their first pick. They definitely don't need a point guard as they have Dennis Smith. They have a three-man in Harrison Barnes, but they could kind of use everything else here. I think I will go with Gary Trent. Obviously played at Duke. He's a shot maker. Potentially wasn't able to show his full repertoire as Duke's probably like fourth or fifth option. So maybe the increased spacing in the NBA could help him as a offensive creator. He was used primarily as a shooter at Duke, and he did that very well. There are defensive concerns, but I think he's going to fit with the Dennis Smith and Harrison Barnes at the three. That's a pretty promising fit, and I think he's one of the best players available, and they could definitely use his shot making abilities.
I have now a pick with Atlanta at number 34. Atlanta's a team that has picked a lot in this draft. They've already drafted Dante DiVincenzo, Melvin Frazier, and Jaren Jackson. They could use a point guard, but I'm not really enamored with the candidates here in terms of an immediately playing fit. So instead, I'll just go draft and stash Isuf Sanan, the Slovenian prospect. He's the youngest player available in the draft. He's still 18 years of age, but he has a lot of upside. He's very athletic, long arms. To me, he's a guy who they could draft and stash in this range. This is a range where they might be, selling a pick, trading a pick. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them not make one of the picks in that either that 30th pick or that 34th pick. But since we're not going to do trades in this one, I'll have them pick and take a draft and stash candidate.
At 35 of Orlando, I'm also going with an international guy with Zanan Musa, 6'9", at Adriatic League. Kind of like a microwave scorer. Is very good creating shots for himself. The shooting percentages are a little lower just because he does have a lot of ill-advised shots, but anywhere you can get a guy off the bench that can create his own shot is a pretty good position in need. One of his issues is he can't really shoot off the catch. Still improving that aspect, but
okay, 36 to New York. I had them taking Mikal Bridges at number 9. So they could, potentially use a guard, but they are kind of, between a guard that you're going to get at 36 is probably not going to be better than, Trey Burke or Emmanuel Mudiay. So I think that they should turn more to a big man. Porzingis is currently the 4, even though 5 is his more long-term position. Don't know how Cancer fits into their long-term plans. I think he'll be back This year he has a player option, and then I think he's probably a free agent the year after that. So I'll go with a big man who I like better than most, who is a little undersized, but can certainly shoot the ball and can certainly rebound. That's Omari Spellman from Villanova.
That is a very interesting pick. I really had no sense of where you were going to go there. I was thinking maybe Jared Vanderbilt. I know you're super high on him.
Yeah,
now it's Sacramento. This is a super weird spot. That's it's an interesting pick, for a number of reasons. I'll go with Jared Vanderbilt here. They don't really need a big. They really need like a combo forward, and Jared Vanderbilt really isn't that type. But you love the upside there, potential to lead the break and have another ball handler next to Doncic and De'Aaron Fox long term. The Kings have been known to take some risks, especially in the 20s and 30s, to try to strike gold. They tried that with Harry Giles last year in the draft. This year, they'll try Vanderbilt, who is often injured in college and even in AAU before that, but certainly has all the physical tools to be a high-level NBA player.
At 38, I'm going to go with someone I had high on my board, Jacob Evans.
Already picked Jacob Evans. Stop sleeping.
My God. That's on me.
Do you tune me out, P1?
Yeah, you talk to me so much sometimes it kind of tune you out. Okay. This is very embarrassing again. I think I'm going to go Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown is someone who's, I think, would be a pretty good glue guy. Kind of locks down and plays defense, is very gritty. Brings a lot of toughness and versatility. Doesn't really need the ball that much, but mainly because jump shot is kind of suspect. But yeah.
Okay, so I have Philly at 39. They have previously picked in this draft. They picked Bruce Brown. They have picked Mo Wagner, and they have picked Miles Bridges. That's a pretty full roster. I know that that's probably it for their roster spots. They do have two-way contracts available. They have both of their two-ways. The draft and stash candidates are noticeably weak this year. I'll go with Anthony Simons, the high school prospect, former top 10 prospect, who considered schools like Tennessee and Dayton and NC State before ultimately deciding to enter this draft. I guess Philly wants him to be a two-way in this scenario. There's just not many stash guys. So I'll lock in Anthony Simons.
Number 40, Brooklyn. Brooklyn's done a really nice job over the last couple of years just drafting and then finding some late steals in the late first, early second round. I'll draft a guy who I think has a lot of upside, Kevin Hervey from UT Arlington. He's a guy who really popped at the combine from a physical tool standpoint with that 7'4" wingspan to go along with 6'9" frame, I believe he's at. Shoots the ball, has some offensive creation ability from what he had to do in the Sun Belt. Kind of as a 1-2 punch with Eric Neal. He did a little bit of pick and pop stuff, a little bit of pick and roll, kind of in the combo forward mold where you could find some upside. And that's really what the Nets are looking for in this range of the draft, is just a lottery ticket. So, given they already picked a guard, I'll go combo forward in Kevin Hervey.
41 at Orlando. Orlando really likes a lot of long twitch athletes. Guys that are kind of tweeners and can play multiple positions. So I'm going to go with Chimeti Metu. He's a pretty good athlete, 6'10", that is very mobile. I think he can defend at a lot of different positions. Pretty good rim running and transition as well. His shot has been improving in college, but not sure how that would translate into the NBA.
Okay, 42 Detroit. They, I think, could really use like a bigger wing. They have Luke Kennard, who's more of like a traditional two. They have like a Langston Galloway, who's kind of a combo guard. They have Stanley Johnson, who's like a true three, but doesn't shoot the ball very well. So I could either go with like a shooter type, like a scorer type, like a Jerome Robinson. D'Anthony Melton kind of doesn't 100% fit with that roster. I think I'll go with Vince Edwards from Purdue. He has 3-and-D written all over him. You know, he can guard perimeter players. He can guard more combo forwards or even true four men. So that's a good fit there. A guy who can play small ball four, who can play the three, who can shoot the ball, and can defend multiple positions.
Number 43 to the Denver Nuggets. I think I'm going to draft. I'm going to go with Shake Milton here, just because I think he's the best player on the board. I had a near first round grade on him. He hasn't really fit in any of the spots I've been drafting. But he can handle the ball. He can shoot the ball a little bit, play multiple positions. To me, this is as far as you let him slide if you're Denver. You just take a chance on a guy who I think is an immediate NBA rotation player. And they land a guy who was just super productive and super just solid at SMU. When you look at the numbers he was able to put up in a pretty good league in the American Conference, Shake Milton, to me, might have been the best player in the AAC when he was fully healthy. He averaged 18 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, got 45% from the field, 44% from three, 43% actually. But there's a place for that on any NBA team. We've touched on kind of the concerns with them on the wing in wing depth. Milton kind of helps bolster that wing between Kevin Knox and Milton. I really like what we've been able to put together for Denver this draft.
44 for Washington. I think Washington needs like a backup combo guard who can play with both John Wall and Bradley Beal. I'm going to go with D'Anthony Melton. Kind of like a small combo guard, 6'3", but very good defensively. Very good. Can play on and off ball. On ball, he's a really willing passer. Not really sure about how the shot progressed. Obviously, he sat out last year due to the FBI investigations, but hopefully we'll see some progress at the next level.
Okay, 45 Brooklyn kind of doubles up what they've already done with Grayson Allen, but this is the best prospect on the board in my opinion. That's Jerome Robinson from Boston College. People have him as high as 13 on mock drafts now, which I think is ridiculous, but just kind of shows he's one of these late risers in the draft process. Even if he doesn't really fit with Brooklyn long term, he's certainly a nice flyer to take here.
Yeah, I expect Jerome Robinson to be a first rounder. I agree. The hype is just way overblown at this point. But at this point in the draft, I think it's a pretty safe pick to just grab a good basketball player. You'll be a good second unit kind of creator and scorer. 46 to Houston. I was thinking about Robinson if he fell to me as a high level shooter. Was considering Landry Shamet as well. But I think what Houston could really use is just another versatile defender with 3-and-D upside, a guy who plays with high IQ. And to me, that guy is Kenrich Williams. To me, this is a really perfect fit. A guy who played 4 different positions at TCU, has some creation ability for others, has excellent floor vision, competes on the glass, shoots the 3 at 40%. There's some PJ Tucker in his game. There's just he's kind of that junkyard dog, which every team can use. And a team like Houston, who's really just looking for drafting in the second round, a bench piece who might help them win a quarter of a game against the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. Obviously, should the league maintain somewhat of its similar balance, free agency can change a lot of things, but should Chris Paul resign, they're looking for a rotation player who helps your team. And to me, Kenrich Williams helped any team in the NBA, but would be a really terrific fit for the Rockets at number 46.
At 47 with the Lakers, I'm going to go with Justin Jackson. Kind of a new era, small ball 4, 6'6", but has a 7'3" wingspan. More of a forward than a wing like mobility wise. But I think that defensively he brings a lot of ability. I think that's it. And then also his developing jump shot.
Okay, number 48 to Minnesota. We're taking Keita Diop in the first pick, so they could use kind of a guy who could play, multiple positions on the perimeter. Let's see. I know that Tom Thibodeau likes defense, and I think this guy has some offensive upside. I'll go with Riley Alkins here from Arizona. He's a bit wild with his decision making. I thought he was kind of a disaster at the combine, even though a lot of people were saying he played pretty well. And he's another guy whose stock seems to be rising right now. But at the combine, I mean, he was just driving to the rim every time, getting stripped, turning it over a lot. But I think he has a ton of potential as a two-way wing. He's a tough physical player. I think in terms of what could happen with him in terms of like the actual draft, I think that maybe Detroit at a 42 would be a good fit. But I would prefer Vince Edwards for them. That's why I picked Vince Edwards there. But I will take Riley Alkins here at number 48.
Number 49 is a really tough pick for me, just because I really don't know what the Spurs are going to be looking for in terms of what type of contract. Are they looking to stash a guy? Are they looking to get a guy on a two-way? Are they getting a guy who's going to fill a roster spot? I'll go two-way here with the intriguing Isaac Bonga, who another young prospect who plays in Germany right now. We know Greg Popovich loves his draft and stash guys. And so he's a point forward type. I saw a little bit of him, I believe, at the FIBA U19 World Cup last year. He wasn't as impressive as I was maybe hoping for, but still has upside to tap into at 6'9" with a good frame. Definitely a guy who would be a very Spurs pick at number 49.
At 50, I'm gonna go with Hamidou Diallo. Kind of what his calling card right now is just his NBA body and athleticism already. His IQ is kind of suspect. Not really sure how that would translate to the next level. But at this point in the draft, a pretty okay foundation physically for development.
Okay, number 51 to New Orleans. This is another team that could use kind of a bigger wing. They were burned in the playoffs by Kevin Durant, and I don't remember which podcast it was, but someone was saying that that's going to be a definite priority in either free agency or maybe even taking a flyer here at 51. So I'll go with Wenyen Gabriel. He's definitely more of a big, but he is mobile. He plays a lot of energy and effort. I think he could potentially guard multiple positions, including these bigger wings. And if the 3-point shooting that he flashed at the end of the season is for real, then I think he's maybe even a steal in the 50s, even though most people have him projected to be undrafted.
52 to Utah. I'm going to go with Landry Shamet. They could use a shooter, and Landry Shamet's a really good shooter. Another guy who I'm just a lot higher on than where he's gotten to a 52. I saw him as like a first 10 picks of the second round type of guy. So good value here for the Jazz, who could use a shooter. As I said, Shamet shoots the ball extremely well, handles the ball, is a good leader. Made a lot of just huge plays at Wichita State. He was a guy who you just felt like was going to hit a dagger shot or make a clutch play down the stretch of games. Wasn't entirely healthy all season, coming off of that foot injury from the previous offseason. But he's a good passer, takes care of the basketball with a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio in 2016-17, and then 2.5-to-1 this season. I think he's just generally a good basketball player. And at this stage in the draft, you're either drafting for upside or guys who can just be a bench player for you. And to me, Landry Shamet can be a bench player for a playoff team.
53, I'm going to go with someone that I really like for not that great of a reason, but ISO Zoe Alonzo Trier. I think shooting guard is kind of an weak point for the Thunder's roster. Andre Roberson shooting has regressed, and I think at this point, creating shots off the bench is a skill that not a lot of teams have, and so especially at 53, it's no risk pick.
Okay, 54 to Dallas. We have them taking Mo Bamba at number 5, and we have them taking Gary Trent at number 3. Number 54, I'll go with Alize Johnson from Missouri State. He's like a 6'8" power forward who can shoot a little bit. He plays a lot of energy. He's an excellent rebounder despite only being, I think, 6'9" with like a 6'10" wingspan. The wingspan might even be a little smaller than that, but he can handle the ball, which is one of my favorite skills for a big man. You know, he can get the rebound. He can handle the break. His decision-making was a little suspect at the combine scrimmages, but I think he's certainly an NBA player and certainly worth the flyer here for Dallas, who has a couple of different power forwards like Dorian Finney-Smith and Maxi Kleber, but that's definitely take a flyer at a power forward if those are your two options there.
I am now picking number 55 to the Charlotte Hornets. This is just this is a tough range of the draft to pick just because you don't really know what teams are really looking for. I'll go with Devin Hall. Scratch that. I'm going to go full upside, all in on upside. Kostas Antetokounmpo. Basically there's two modes of thinking here. If you're the Charlotte Hornets, you're either looking for a guy who can just give you rotation minutes as you look to sneak into the playoff push. That's obviously keeping Kemba Walker, or you're looking for a lottery pick who could, maybe help you out, especially if you could stash him for a couple of years. Kostas Antetokounmpo is a guy who has super high upside, didn't do much at Dayton, but with the physical tools are there. He's impressed in some of these 1-on-0 workouts for Charlotte. The best way of telling whether a guy is a good basketball player is playing against the chair. But that's another story. I think he's worth a pick at this stage in the draft, just as a flyer if you're the Charlotte Hornets.
Just a side note, Brad is possibly the best one-on-one player I've ever seen in my entire life.
Hey, I didn't know that you remembered that.
It was like what, aim high camp?
No, that was I used to work out with like this basketball trainer, and there was one day where the head of the business saw me working out, and then she offered me to work at her basketball camp, and then that spun off where I worked to like 5 or 6 camps. all based on my one-and-done workout.
Huge for the brand. You're out here making money from your one-on-one workout, just like Kostas Antetokounmpo. But you were saying Patrick at 56.
At 56, I'm gonna go with a stash guy. I'm gonna be so sorry that I'm 100% gonna butcher his name. Radon's. I don't know. Brad, can you help me out with this?
I think it's Rodions Karuks. I mean, I don't know any better than you.
But kind of a stash guy. He's a 18, 19 years old. Spent a lot of time going up and down the FC Barcelona A and B teams. Mostly played on B, but in practice with A. Kind of 6'9", really skinny, pretty fluid athletically, but his NBA translatable skill would be his shooting stroke.
Yes, I was hoping that Rodions Kurucs fell to me at 57. Also, side note, Kevin, did you see on the Sports Illustrated mock draft that Jeremy Woo was saying that Kostis has a promise to Charlotte at 55?
I did not see that. No, so I'm just that good, aren't I?
Oh no, wait, I might be missing. No, sorry,
No,
I was mixing up my promises.
Who promised you?
It was the NBA Draft God Twitter account said that Kostis had a promise 55, and I put that in my mock because I want to. I figured that's a good point to see if he's right. Like he's reporting Luka Doncic 100% to number 2. If I do that and it's wrong, that's a lot worse than me taking a flyer on this guy's sources at number 55. The Jeremy Woo promise was he said that Dante Grantham has a promise in the 50s.
Interesting.
But for my pick at number 57, this is a stash guy I didn't know until a couple hours ago when I saw him on Jackson Hoy's big board. And then I watched a YouTube video, and he seems like a good stash pick here for Oklahoma City. That is Cyril Elizier Vanero from France. He's like a 6'8" wing with a 7'2" wingspan, who's a good defensive player who's not a great shooter or very refined offensive player. But I think, kind of fits Oklahoma City's MO as this multi-positional defensive-minded wing. And, maybe he never makes it in the NBA, but I think he kind of fits their mold and not a bad flyer at number 57.
My final pick in this 2-round mock draft, the Nuggets just picked, so I'll go draft and stash here. I would have went wing or point guard, but you're probably not going to commit three roster spots to the draft. So unless a guy like Trayvon Duval wants to be on a 2-way, I don't think they'd pick him here. So I'll draft Arnoldas Kulbolka, who is a draft and stash guy. He's another 6'9" forward who had some solid numbers for Capo di Orlando this year. He's got a pretty good 3-point stroke. Needs to get stronger, but he's a guy who I think would be who they could stash for a couple of years, see if he turns into anything at this stage in the draft.
With the second to last pick in his mock draft, I'm gonna go with Trayvon Duval. Pretty good athlete. Okay floor general. I think that he thinks he can shoot, but not that great. So he is a little jump shot heavy, but I think the NBA space for his driving would open up a lot of his game for him.
Okay, the last pick of the draft. This is Philly's 6th pick. So they have to stash here if we're doing this draft under the assumption that they're we haven't made any trades. So if Philly was going to pick 6 times, they definitely have to stash here. I think that they could go maybe a domestic stash, a guy who I just mentioned a couple minutes ago that Jeremy Woo says has a promise in the late second round, and that's Dante Grantham. Really like Dante Grantham's game at Clemson. Clemson could have been like a top 10 team maybe if he remained healthy. But unfortunately, he had an injury halfway through the season. Combo forward, probably going to be a power forward. Very athletic, can shoot the ball a little bit. Probably would have been drafted if healthy. If hindsight's 2020, based on how he was playing in that half season, despite not having a ton of draft buzz. And then I kind of mentioned this earlier with when I took Anthony Simons with Philly, but they have both their 2-way spots open, so I would not be surprised if Dante Grantham is 1 going to Philly because they have so many picks, and 2 agreed to a two-way deal.
I believe that would wrap us up. 60 picks in the books. This is fun, guys. Couple undrafted guys of note here. Devontae Graham goes undrafted from Kansas. I think most would expect him to fit in that 30 to 60 range. But I think it's a valid point to look at. There's so many good scoring guards in this draft. Tony Carr is another guy who goes undrafted. A guy like Devontae Graham, a guy like Tony Carr, a guy like a Raleigh Alkins or an Alonzo Trier. Malik Newman did go undrafted as well. There's going to be one or two guys who fall super far in that just shooting or combo guard tier just because there's so many of them. Up front, a couple guys of note who went undrafted. I think DJ Hogue could be a steal in this draft as an undrafted guy. Ray Spalding, Brandon McCoy, a couple guys who go undrafted. But overall, I think this pretty much went as expected in terms of guys getting picked and not getting picked. Any comments from either Patrick or Brad on what we've just went through for the last hour or so?
I think it really shows the lack of stash guys. Like, I don't know how many stash guys we had. Looking back, we had Arnaldus Kabolka, the guy I picked from France. Rodions Karouks is the third one. Bonga could potentially stash as the fourth one. And that's pretty much it. In Yusuf Sanin, that's 5 stash guys. Zana Musa reportedly wants to come over right away. So, and same with Elie Okobo. I read that yesterday. So that's just a very limited amount. And the class of European talent as it is already a bit down. So maybe we see more college players and maybe some college players that are willing to be stashed overseas themselves, kind of like a Colton Iverson was a guy who did that, or like a Deshaun Thomas, or I mean, there are plenty of examples, but that was one of my main takeaways.
Well, I believe that would wrap us up for today's show. Thanks so much, guys, for listening in. What I'll do is I'll actually put all of these names into a quick article for my website. Just throw those up. And I'll link that with the podcast so people can so people can kind of read along as they like. So I'll link the podcast in the article in the podcast, and so you guys can kind of read along as you watch if that's something you guys are interested in doing. Thanks so much for listening. We'll have probably a post-draft podcast at some point this weekend or early next week, breaking down everything we saw and then looking back towards the college game, hitting the dog days of summer. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and have a good one.